We're going to take a momentary break from the disaster going on in this country to talk about a disaster that's closer to the end of its cycle in a foreign country. Jimmy and JoAnne, welcome back to the show. People are eager to hear the news coming out of Libya. How are you guys tonight?
Oh, we're doing well. First of all, I want to just take a couple of minutes and explain the show last week to those that misunderstood what we were doing. Representative White is rated at about a 60% here in Texas. We were excited because he put forward a block, supposedly, for the Greg Abbott, the governor here, his installation of the contact tracing mess. And in the interview, we were very, very polite to Mr. White. We never abused him. We found out if you fluff these guys, you can get them to disclose more. And what we found out is the bill that he put forward was nothing but fluff, period. Because the House and Senate in Texas only meet every other year for 6 months, and they don't open again until next June or July. So the bill that they put forward and all the media, Texas is going to block Abbott, it was BS because it's not even going to be seen, not even going to be talked about for a year. So this is the kind of BS where the bad guys in even Texas get the support of the media. And what we did find out was the governor had nothing to do with installing this thing. All the conditions and everything were put in place by the health department here in Texas.
Bureaucrats.
The bureaucrats, not elected. So they locked down this state. They put forward all these regs and everything. But if you noticed also, White was absolutely schooled in how to contest the information about how Italy was it was a contaminated area in the first place. So he'd been schooled about how people go back to China on holidays, and so
But Jimmy, didn't that statement sound a bit like something that he would have heard on the news or something? I mean, that was a totally unscientific thing that was put forward way back. There's no explanation.
This is a talking point being given to the politicians to respond to questions. So he's being schooled, and he's a he put out so much BS that it'd take a big can of Babbo to try to clean us up. It's just, and the other thing we learned that was very, very important is when he read the statute, it could be interpreted as a third-degree felony. So this is not going to be a voluntary deal. It can be a third-degree felony if you don't comply. So, I want everybody to understand we were fluffing him. We were very polite to him. But we got a lot of very, very important information out of him. So, that's why we did it like we did it. And we did get valuable information. And we live in a very, very small community. And JoAnne and I don't need the goons here coming after us because we got enough goons out of D.C. coming after us. So we were very polite to the guy. And you were too, Jason. But he never answered a question.
I agree with you, Jimmy, and I'm glad you're saying this. He's a nice guy, but I wasn't very satisfied with his answers. He seemed like a typical politician in his answers, and I didn't even know what Babbo was, so it wasn't a total waste.
It was a real strong
comet cleanser,
commenter, but it's on steroids. It's too strong to use today, but we absolutely needed a bunch of Babbo to get all the BS wiped off from him.
It's sad, though, because there's a politician who you'd met personally and had a good opinion of, but when it actually came down to, maybe having an opportunity to educate the other members of the Texas House of Representatives to some of the things that we've been discovering by looking down alternate channels, as compared to what we hear on the news or what's coming out of the WHO, there's just a total void there. He didn't seem to accept or want to hear anything we were saying.
Well, he didn't have anything to do with it because they have not been in session since last November.
But
who produced this crap that the Texans are suffering under? Okay, that's why we're asking the question: who gave him his orders? Well, we found out it's a bureaucratic organization. It's the health department in Texas that did all of it. So last November, either these criminals here produced all this documentation, all these regs last November before anything happened, or it was done someplace else and delivered to the people of Texas via a bureaucratic bunch of criminals in the health department.
But
that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, he first started out by giving the governor here, Greg Abbott, a big, you've been doing great, you're wonderful. And let me tell you something, Jason, I have not met one person yet in Texas who likes Greg Abbott or supports him. So I guess I should have said, well, who are you talking to? You know, because he's not a popular governor now with what has happened.
But wait a minute, I'm confused. Wait, I thought everybody was pretty happy in Texas that it wasn't locking down and all that, and now we're hearing that Texas is having some uptick. Any place that didn't lock down, they're saying
that's a lie. But Jason, the reason that this governor released things is he had no choice. There were people on his doorstep. There were Texans raising hell.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he acts real magnanimous. So I'm considering opening everything up, but he said I'm gonna make my decision next week. Next week never came around. He was forced. He was drugged by his toenails out of his wheelchair.
Texas should have never been shut down.
No.
I mean, that's just criminal what he did. No, but New York should have never been shut down. No. None of them should have been shut down.
But he's a piece of garbage. Everybody in Texas, so anybody that thinks the Texans are really on top of it, it's the people in Texas. It doesn't have anything to do with the politicians, bureaucrats, or anybody. They're all traitors, absolutely snakes in the grass.
They're politicians.
People in the comments are asking, you know, who's the health department of Texas in bed with? I mean, I got to imagine the CDC and all these guys who are medical researchers and doctors and stuff like that have either just come from a job that was funded by Bill Gates or somebody like that, or they want a job that's going to be funded by those guys. It's really bad.
You remember last week I asked him, I said, well, how much of a big kickback did they get from the Gates Foundation? Oh, I don't know anything about that. But, you know, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we are all suffering with. But, you know, to get somebody on the hot seat and have him disclose what he did was a real coup, I thought, on our part. But
he did say something good this past week. At least I read it. It was out in the news. And he put it on his Facebook page. They were talking about defunding the police. And he said, let's defund all these overpaid bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, mayors of cities that are bureaucrats that aren't doing anything but taking money, living in big mansions. Let's defund them first.
Yeah, he did say that.
So that was a good point he made.
Yeah. I mean, you know, again, I don't want to say anything bad about the guy, and I certainly didn't want to challenge him on the show. Presumed he was a friend of yours, but we did get to a point in the show where I think viewers were frustrated that he sort of was dodging questions in a way that politicians
He never answered a question. But like I said, I want everybody to take away from that. We got 3 very, very important pieces of information from him that we would not have gotten otherwise.
And just reiterate those for a second. It's that they were closed and they had nothing to reiterate those.
Right.
Okay, first of all, the reason we had him on is he and 2 other guys came forward with a bill to block this contact tracing here in Texas. However, that was complete bullshit because it would not even be put up for consideration for a year because they're not in session now, and they won't be in session until June or July of next year. So it's crap. It was absolute fluff BS.
Texas is in session every other year.
Every other year for 6 months.
Every odd year.
The last time they were in session, they closed their last session this past November. So, you know, that was an absolute bunch of fluff from the media trying to make it look like these Texans are really doing a good job. Not true. The second thing was, in reading the Texas statutes, you know, it looks like it's a 3rd-degree felony.
If you don't comply.
Right before that, he said, oh, you don't have to comply. But then he said, well, you know, when you read this, it looks like it's probably a 3rd-degree felony.
If you don't comply.
A politician. When a politician says it probably is or could be, you can bet your ass it is.
So in other words, so when he told us that if they call you up to do contact tracing and you just say no thanks, that's a 3rd-degree felony?
Could be. Probably is.
Holy cow, that's a whole different show. People need to go back to last week's show and check that out.
All the rest of the states better look real close at what they're being fed too, because we got the disclosure from this guy. Probably didn't even know what he had disclosed. Look closely at what's being shoved down your throat in the rest of the states, because I'm pretty well assured that all 50 states are getting fed the same orders.
Wow.
So that was an important piece. The third thing was that you know, the governor had nothing to do with installing this mess here. It was done by the health department. The governor had nothing to do with it.
The contract for $295 million, you mean?
Yeah, that contract was put in place by this health group The people were hired by this health group. All the governor did was sign it, but it was delivered to him as a fait accompli.
And so they don't, who hired this group? Who are the guys that spent the $290 million?
95.
These are bureaucrats.
And one of the requirements is that all the employees use their own computers, and they're going to be given all of our personal health information. Wow. That's part of the contract. So everybody look at what you've got coming in your state, probably the same crap. So They have shredded the few health rights we had left.
Well, people in Texas are going to fight it. They're real angry about it. So I don't know if it'll even last here.
In the old days, what was known as a Texas contract was the way everybody was good to their word and their honor. And when you agreed to do something, you shook hands and traded bullets. And if you needed your bullet back, you're damn sure going to get it. So I think we need to go to Texas contracts. I think we need to do Texas contracts on everything.
I love all these Texas jokes.
So
Jimmy, a lot of people are moving to Texas because they want guns. I'm hearing a lot of people posting, and a lot of people who are, typically liberals and into gun control and stuff. The riots and the uncertainty are making them fear for their personal protection and want guns. I also want to remind people who are watching us right now, if they missed the show last week, they should go back and check it out. But in just about 20 minutes, we're going to be beginning our regular weekly Monday night show, Unseen Libya, with Jimmy and JoAnne Moriarty. That's on patreon.com /James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Now, are you guys on Subscribestar yet, or you're waiting for it to be accepted?
We're having enough trouble with our computers trying to get everything straightened out like it is, so we plan to do that, but we haven't been able to get there yet.
But you do have a totally new version of LibyanWarTheTruth.com. So if people haven't been there yet, they can check that out. It's much snappier, I have to say, better performance. And of course, people can purchase the DVD Escape from Al-Qaeda. It's $15 plus $5 for shipping and handling within the United States. People who sponsor Jimmy and JoAnne on Patreon get free shipping on the DVD. So make sure you send them an email if you want that DVD. JoAnne, there's a lot going on in Libya tonight, not just all this stuff in Texas and New York and throughout the United States. What are we going to be talking about in 15 minutes when we make the jump to our sponsor exclusive?
We're going to talk about the Libyan people taking their country back from the Turkish occupiers. Erdogan trying to reinstall the Ottoman Empire in North Africa. And what has happened is when the Libyan army backed out of Tarhuna, which is a city near Tripoli, the militia, they backed out because of a number of reasons. They were being absolutely destroyed by the Turkish army offshore, bombing them all the time. And the city was being taken apart, it was being hurt by it. So they backed off, and the militias immediately went in there and destroyed the city and killed and raped and burned and even dug up graves in the city, absolutely destroyed it. But just now, right before we started this show, it's known to Egypt that there were 60 Egyptian workers in Tarhuna who were tortured to death. And General Sisi of Egypt is saying that these are Misrata militias and they will be taken out because of this. Misrata will pay for this. But there's a big movement in Libya. General Sisi came forward with the Cairo Declaration. And
he's the leader of Egypt.
He's the leader of Egypt, and he came up with the Cairo Declaration, which says that Egypt and all these countries want peace in Libya and an election in Libya. In order for that to happen, all foreign occupiers have to leave, all militias have to leave, all mercenaries have to leave, and the Libyan people have to be allowed to have a peaceful, legitimate election, yes, in their country. And so, of course, even Donald Trump, all of them came forward. All the countries, North Africa, all of them came forward and said, yes, we stand with you. Italy, Greece, all of them, except for Turkey, the Muslim Brotherhood regime in Tripoli, illegitimate regime, and Qatar. They are still supplying weapons and mercenaries into Libya. So these countries decided this is enough. We're going to stop it. Oh, Russia also backed it. The Libyan army has been turning off the submarines that were in there electronically. I think it was France who stopped a bunch of frigates from coming in today. The Italy National, their military Air Force is now patrolling the Mediterranean along with the Greek Air Force and the French Air Force. And they're going to stop this.
There's been a lot of countries that have put out a lot of lip service. Oh, we're going to help Libya. Nobody ever did a damn thing. But just in the last few days, they've all come forward. Now there is physical support. And JoAnne and I have received a lot of information that we have been asked not to disclose it because it's so critical. There's so much help coming from all over the place. And these countries do not want to turn around and be a target of Muslim Brotherhood in their own countries. So they have been quietly and surreptitiously providing weapons and training and everything for the Libyan army, the legitimate Libyan army. But now then they're all coming open. And since this accord, this Cairo Accord, we have Egypt with a huge amount of military personnel, weapons and everything, not only staged on the border of Libya, but now we see it moving into Libya. And since this Tarhuna event, when 50 at least Egyptian workers were killed, now then Sisi has said that's the end of it. And so
the UN, they found mass graves there in Tarhuna, and the UN is now saying these are war crimes. Germany saying these are crimes against humanity. They want an investigation into the militias. They want this. And today, the Siraj people came out and said, "Oh, we didn't do that. That was the army who did that when they were in there." The Libyan army. The Libyan army was protecting.
Now, if our audience will remember, Tarhuna is where those young girls lived whose father was killed on the first day, those 5 or 6 little girls. So Tarhuna is kind of a real soft spot in our hearts anyhow. But what they've done to Tarhuna is absolutely criminal. And this is with the intent. And the reason for that, the tribes of Tarhuna told the mercenaries, told Muslim Brotherhood, we're going to rout you from our city. Enough is enough. And so they had started doing that. And in retaliation, because these people in Tarhuna had the effrontery to try to protect their own homes, then all the Muslim Brotherhood came in there with full force, and they've literally destroyed that place.
But
they're still in there. Huh?
I know this is mainstream news, but it's interesting to see that The Guardian, I was pleased to see that they're reporting on it, but they're saying, look at how they position it. Fears grow of further atrocities in area controlled by Khalifa Haftar. So Khalifa Haftar is the Libyan National Army, but he's not the guy making these mass graves, right?
He's not even controlling it now. It's been a week or 2 weeks since the militias have been in there.
But we're seeing some dramatic things. We saw Turkey, all of a sudden last week, they made an announcement that 2 of their submarines just went off the air. And Russia has that technology that they can turn a ship into a cork. And so I'm sure those 2 submarines were turned off. They were not in communication. And then we heard from Egypt that they were sending one of their towboat submarines to drag both those submarines into port and arrest the perpetrators.
But Erdogan is so arrogant. Yeah. He tried to make a meeting with Russia to go in there to get Russia on his side, and Russia canceled the meeting. They said, we're not going to meet with you. And he is now threatening to fly the Turkish flag in the base. When the LNA left the base that's right by Tunisia, because they were like they said, we're not going to just stand here and have our young men destroyed by the Turkish military when no one is helping. They're offshore. They're bombing us all the time. And we're going to go back and figure out what we're going to do about this.
Erdogan is
sorry, guys, real quick. Here's a good point from Reefer Madman. He's saying this just looks like a front loader pushed some dirt around. How are these mass graves? It's a fair point.
Because they're new. They're new mass graves.
But how do we know? This is just a T-shirt buried in some dirt.
Yeah, one of the bodies the tribes gave me, the young man, was a Libyan army member who had been captured and been tortured to death, and they buried him in one of these mass graves. They showed the picture and they have the body.
I'm not gonna try to deliver photographs that are going to absolutely be a Loctite because the communications are still so controlled. So when we get a photograph like this and we're told this is new graves, first of all, we know that area. We know Tarhuna. There's no place in Tarhuna that looks like that. That ground is freshly tilled. No place anywhere around that looks like that. So that's my first idea that is something different. Second, we're not seeing the bodies, but if they want to see what the mass graves look like, the Muslim Brotherhood,
you've shown them before.
they go to our DVD and look at it.
Yeah.
But this is a fact about what's being done by these Muslim Brotherhood, Al Qaeda, ISIS people in Libya, in the Tarhun area.
We're going to give a bunch of updates on our program tonight. We have a lot of updates to do. And we have a short video to play, and Jimmy's going to talk about some of the banking games that are continuing.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're just about 10 minutes out, so we're going to make that transition pretty soon. I know a lot of people are worried about some of the stuff that's going on here in the United States. We're back to coronavirus now. We seem to be stuck in this cycle where it's either protests or coronavirus, but now they're saying that this was the craziest thing. There was some doctor on the news yesterday trying to tell us that there's been a huge uptick in coronavirus cases since Memorial Day, and they were saying, well, it has to be people going to the beach. But there was something else that happened on Memorial Day, which was the murder of George Floyd, and the following day, protests started. There was not a single mention of the possibility that people gathering at these protests, fighting, beating each other up, bleeding on each other, sweating, spitting, yelling at each other, that couldn't have possibly done anything.
Because the coronavirus is not allowed in any protest. It's not allowed.
Yeah, well, they don't stop these protests for coronavirus. If you want to protest the lockdown and the violation of the Constitution, they'll kick you out in 20 minutes. But, you know, if you want to destroy buildings and accuse police officers who are defending everybody in the Wendy's parking lot from a drunk maniac who's going to steal a weapon from the cops and use it on them, those guys are obviously racist for spending 43 minutes trying to calmly and professionally deal with a guy who was way drunk. We're getting off topic, of course.
What happened in Libya, we're seeing here in the United States. And we said this 9 years ago. We saw what was happening in Libya. We saw the absolute influx of all these CIA and Mossad trained terrorists coming into the United States. There's 400,000 of them, not Libyans, but people that were trained mercenaries in Libya and transported in the United States. We think the number is about 4 million. They call themselves UN white hats, etc. But what happened in Libya is happening here in the United States. So, you know, and we're being played. The information we're getting, none of it's correct. And I'm going to cover that. And JoAnne's going to give a lot of information on what's really happening in Libya. It's all good news. And it's time for us all to be awake and pay attention to what's going on around us.
Right. So we're going to make the transition over to the sponsor-exclusive segment now. I hope that people will join us on patreon.com/James and JoAnne Moriarty, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We talk about a lot of stuff that YouTube has removed from the internet. So we've created this sponsor-exclusive system so that people can decide. You know, I know YouTube is free, but what they're doing is they're taking away your ability to choose what you get to hear. And if you join us on Subscribestar and Patreon, we're going to get into some of these details. Jimmy and JoAnne have been publishing this type of stuff since they survived and escaped from Al Qaeda, but unfortunately so much of it has been removed from the internet. So we'll see everybody over there in just about 5 minutes. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you.